Welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker is Matt Hutchings with the topic of customer-focused quantum computers. Seeqc is developing the first fully digital quantum computing platform for global businesses. They combine classical and quantum technologies to address the efficiency, stability, and cost issues endemic to quantum computing systems. The company applies classical and quantum technology through digital readout and control technology and a unique chip-scale architecture. Seeqc's quantum system provides the energy and cost efficiency, speed, and digital control required to make quantum computing useful and bring the first commercially scalable, problem-specific quantum computing applications to market. Hello, Matt. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, thank you very much for that introduction. That was great. Did my job. So yeah, it's great to be invited to this data science conference. I'm really excited to talk about what we're doing at Seeqc. So as you mentioned, we're building really from the ground up, customer-focused quantum computing platforms built around our core digital quantum computing technology, which we talk about truly digital quantum computing, and I'll get into a little bit about why we can say that through the slides. But just to start off, I always like to introduce where we've came from, because we're not your conventional startup in this quantum computing space. We spun out of Hypers, who are actually the world leaders in superconducting electronic systems and building systems, and they themselves spun out of IBM in the early 80s. To spin out to focus on this technology. And by spinning out of Hypers, we're inheriting a lot of heritage in actually building and delivering complete cryogenic superconducting systems from concept through to full system and actually delivery to customers. So this is some really exciting heritage to be working with. And we also, as part of that, we've commercialized the world's fastest digital classical superconducting technology. And this is based on something called rapid single flux quantum logic, which is a whole new type of classical logic that can deliver significantly faster speeds of processing than today's CMOS style classical computing. And with this heritage and the technology I'll talk about and the partnerships we've got, we were able to raise a seed round in 2019 of 6.8 million. And then we very recently announced our Series A round of 22.5 million almost. And that was led by EQT, which is a fantastic financial investor. And that is included along with a lot of strategic investments. And so we really wanted to build a hybrid kind of financial and strategic investment, and some really exciting partnerships there we can build with our strategic investors. So one example is Merck, based in Germany, who we're working with to build a superconducting quantum computing platform. And we also spun out with a multi-layer commercial grade superconducting foundry. So unlike a lot of the kind of startups in this space, we've already got kind of a chip foundry, which we run actually commercially and gain revenue from. And this chip foundry allows us to do very rapid R&D of our quantum computing platforms. And we also started up with a number of fantastic employees, and we've since expanded the team to 18. With numerous PhDs, fantastic diverse mix of people, and we also spun out with a number of patents, and we now currently have 63 issued patents within our portfolio. So we have a fantastic foundation to be building the kind of technology we're introducing today. So, why are we building quantum computers, and why are we building commercial quantum computers right now? And this comes down to the fact that, in our opinion and the world's opinion, the dawn of kind of quantum computing has begun. And you've seen this with very recent, as the world has been growing in quantum computing, the recent announcements by Google in actually building the first full stack quantum computer that can beat a classical computer. I'm activating Google on my phone. There we go. So yeah, they demonstrated that for the first time a quantum computer full stack system could beat a classical computer in time. And this was a really exciting announcement. So ultimately, this is the beginning of the commercialization of quantum computing. But to start off, I'd like to talk about where quantum computing is today and how that relates to where classical computing was in its early stages. So early on in classical computing, you might remember these kind of room-filling systems. This is the ENIAC from 1946. And what you see here is a vast system with lots of system complexity, all these wires and control systems. And all of this is to kind of take advantage of the limited capacity of the transistors that they were working with at the time. So here you see these kind of large systems, and ultimately this system itself wasn't a product; it was a research tool. And to take this from these room filling systems to the kind of the modern computers that we all know and love today, it took the invention of the integrated circuit, and that integrated circuit took a lot of this system complexity and integrated it on chip, and ultimately led to the explosion of scalability of classical computing technology, and allowed them to scale to the kind of commercial requirements. We like to point that out because now you can look at today's kind of quantum computer, and this is one of those Google Supremacy systems, and you can see a kind of similar story here. You've got lots of complex wiring overhead in order to control your very delicate qubit systems. So you have all of this room temperature electronics and vast numbers of wires that go to store and try and control the qubits themselves, the quantum core processor that has to exist for superconducting systems at near absolute zero, the coldest you can get. And ultimately that's because qubits are very delicate. And you've got these two competing worlds. You've got room temperature classical logic and low temperature quantum logic, and you're trying to take all of this room temperature classical logic and put it into the fridge. And ultimately what that leads to is very high system complexity and ultimately lots of heat and latency into the system. So it's fantastic for getting where we are and proving that you can build quantum computers, but we need to find a new technology to be able to commercially scale these systems. And what we need is the integrated circuit of the quantum era. And that's exactly what we've done at Seeqc. So this chip here, the integrated SFQ class integrated quantum module, takes a lot of that room temperature control and distills it right down and integrates it on this chip. And we intercombine this at the core of the quantum processor with qubits to create a truly integrated quantum computing system. And with that, we want to take this to actually deliver truly commercially scalable and energy efficient quantum computing. And that commercially scalable aspect is the key here. That we don't just want to build systems that can just about solve certain commercial problems. We want to be able to scale with the ever increasing needs of our enterprise customers. So we want to build truly scalable systems. So with this kind of SFQ chip scale digital logic, single flux quantum logic, which is that classical logic that we inherited from Hyperis, we can massively reduce the system complexity in building a quantum computer by integrating a lot of that complexity on chip. What this really does is it massively increases the speed of the system by reducing the latency. So if you really want to build an optimum system, superconducting quantum computer, you really need to lower that latency between your core control and your quantum logic in order to do some exciting things. And this leads to a number of scalable improvements. So we can reduce the environmental error induced by control from room temperature by integrating it on chip at the cryogenic stages, and we massively reduce the dissipation and heat onto the system. So ultimately making a more scalable system. And what all of this means to us really is building a product that has massive cost reductions. So that we can actually build a commercially viable project platform. And just to say, we're building superconducting qubit platforms You've probably heard some really exciting alternative technologies and platforms to build quantum computers out there. We're in the superconducting space here, but our system is designed to work with any superconducting style quantum computing platform. So we can work with today's kind of transmon style qubits, but right through to the new and emerging exciting topologically protected and better error corrected systems. But we're not just building a system here, we want to build a product. And when we say that, we want to build a customer-focused product. And for that, we're building application-specific quantum computers that match some core verticals that we think can, in the near term, deliver commercial value from quantum computers. And why are we doing that? Well, ultimately, early quantum computers are not going to be of large scale. Even though they might be able to scale, we want to take maximum advantage of even small quantum computers. So by being application specific, we can massively reduce the overhead resources required to solve critical high value problems. And also, we can take maximum advantage of the number of qubits, small number of qubits we have available. And all of this is through very tight hardware and software integration. And I'll talk through a few of our partnerships later where ultimately we're not full stack, we're building the hardware platform, but we require to have very tight, close partnerships with companies to build tightly integrated hardware software. But also, we're not just building a quantum computer here, we're building a hybrid quantum classical computer, because ultimately, building quantum computers, the world is still going to want and make maximum use of classical computers that have already been developed, and we've learned, lots of applications just for classical computing. So the future won't be one or the other; it will be a hybrid of quantum and classical. And we're building actually the first truly hybrid quantum classical system. You've probably heard, a lot of quantum hybrid systems, but in this case, we actually integrate that classical logic with the core, within the core of the processor. So our digital quantum management system is partnered with a classical coprocessor based out of the same core technology, this SFQ class technology. And this can deliver a classical computer that has, tens to 40 gigahertz proven classical speed. And this means that this system alone is significantly faster than the data set classical computers that you can buy time on. And this gives us massive support for just the quantum computing itself and the error correction, but also we can open this up to software developers to give them a truly integrated quantum classical experience. So here, you can start to see building up the actual integrated quantum processor and quantum classical processor of the future, where we've taken as much of that complexity integrated on chip and then brought it inside within the qubit system itself to build a truly integrated system with ultra low latency. And that's the key here. We want to build very low latency, very scalable systems. But what does all this integration really mean? As I was going back to, in those early classical eras where we had all of those room systems filling rooms, and ultimately it took the invention of the integrated circuit to break what they called at the time tyranny of numbers, that every time you added a bit of classical logic, you had to have a wire to control that bit of classical logic. And this tyranny of numbers ultimately led to the belief that at that time you couldn't build a classical, scalable, and commercially grade classical computer. Then that's when the integrated circuit came along and broke that additional wire per classical bit, and led to commercialization of classical computing systems. And we're seeing a very similar story today with today's quantum computing platforms, where every additional qubit requires an additional wire, or 2 or 3 or 4 wires of control and readout in order to make maximum use of that computer. And that's great for these early and near-term kind of quantum computing platforms, and maybe you could scale to a few thousand qubits and start doing some really interesting work there. But ultimately, these aren't systems that are going to be able to make a commercially scalable and viable product. So with our integrated circuit and integrated quantum circuit, we can break that additional wire per qubit rule and massively break that, so that by the time we get up to very large scale systems, the number of wires that we're having to use to control those systems and read them out isn't outside of the realms of what can be achieved today, even with today's current kind of system technology. And in fact, we could manipulate and control 100K qubits with similar number of wires that it would take the state of the art to control 1,000 qubits. So it's a game-changing integration. And what this really means is we can deliver orders of magnitude better performance where it really matters for our customers. So you've got all of these interesting points here, but ultimately the biggest thing here is cost reduction. We want to build a commercially scalable and commercially viable product, and at the moment, it's been estimated that quantum computers that are being built today cost about $40,000 per qubit, and ultimately, so this means that these systems are going to cost hundreds of millions or more to build, a commercial product. We want to bring that down to a point where you could sell a commercial computing platform. So we've made it significantly cheaper. And with that, we're building these application-specific systems. And as I said, we're targeting very specific but very high-value verticals. So we want to build a single application-specific processor within all of these verticals. And we've built some strategic partnerships with end-user customers in these key verticals to enable us on this journey, because we want to build customer-focused systems. So to do that, we want to actually be integrated with the customer to understand, what are they trying to solve today with classical computers that isn't quite doing the job, and how can a quantum computer better solve their problems. So we've targeted these verticals because we also believe that we can deliver commercial viable products in the nearest term with these verticals. So it's based around two kind of core principles and value from quantum computing, and that is the potential to simulate quantum systems with a quantum computer. That's the most simple to understand, and that's where you can get some interesting quantum chemistry simulators and pharmaceutical simulators. And we've got some really exciting work I'll talk about with Merck soon. And then you've got at the other end of the coin is the kind of optimization world. So quantum computers have the real potential to give you massive improvements in optimization. And this can target, from finance right through to logistics. So some really exciting applications and ultimately some value add to our customers in these core areas. So as I said, we have partnered closely with Merck to deliver a system that can scale towards their commercial needs and ultimately help them build better material products for their customers. So Merck, we joined them in their journey of building, understanding what quantum computing can do for them when they developed an in-house team of about 50 experts to explore use cases for their technology and how that can deliver, real power for their needs in the commercial space, and how that can go beyond the classical computers that they can work with today. And when we came together, they realized with us that we could actually build systems that could actually scale with their needs, and it wasn't just going to deliver just a proof of concept that could just about simulate a molecule and then would stop. We want to actually work with them and continue to scale. And ultimately, this led to them investing in our Series A round and building a partnership where we're actually taking our core technology and developing it specifically to target some of the interesting work that they're trying to do in the performance material space. So with that, we're building these platforms, but ultimately, as I talked about earlier, we're not full stack. We are focused on the hardware platform and building that out, but we want to partner with some of the fantastic groups out there to deliver the full stack experience for our customers. But when we partner, we don't just mean we're going to throw their name on our website and just talk to them every so often. We want to deeply partner with them because we're building a truly hybrid quantum classical system. So we want to really integrate our classical and quantum logic and integrate our hardware and software development. So we've partnered very deeply with these kind of three entities. So just to talk briefly about each one, 1QBit is a fantastic Canadian quantum computing algorithm developer. And they have been on the scene for almost since the beginning of the quantum computing space, and I've got some real deep expertise in this, and some really exciting work going on in machine learning, and also how you can develop error correction codes for quantum computers to actually deliver that scalability and that fault tolerant behavior. So we partnered with them to actually demonstrate the world's first truly integrated quantum error correction and quantum module, and integrated at the cryogenic level. And that's all to build machine learning gadgets for some of the exciting opportunities you can do with that. And then also we've got a great partnership with Riverlane, and they have some deep expertise in quantum chemistry. So we're working in our kind of chemical industry sector with their expertise and their domain knowledge there. But they've also got a fantastic operating system that can really take advantage of even the nearest term quantum computers. So they have an operating system that really gets down to the metal and takes full advantage of whatever you can deliver. And that's, that deep integration is exactly what we're looking for with any operating system. Some exciting works in that space. And we're also working with a great company out of Innsbruck, Parity QC. And they are developing, they've got a focus on optimization. And they've got this fantastic code that allows you to parallelize the control of your qubits to maximize the performance when you've got a limited scale system. And that control that they've managed to parallelize is optimally matched to our kind of integrated control circuitry. So some really exciting work going on there. So with that, we've got most importantly for me anyway, some fantastic leadership. So I myself have the least experience of the bunch. So I had did a PhD in physics, and then ultimately went on to join the Plord Research Lab in Syracuse, where I did some really interesting work on how you build early stage quantum computers, and how you optimize qubits for quantum computers. So I was very lucky to be working with in a collaboration with the IBM quantum computing team in Yorktown Heights, the builders of the IBM Q systems. At that early stage, and I was developing a novel type of qubit architecture that actually went on into one of their early 7-qubit modules. Was actually the first quantum computer to actually run a real application. So that was some really exciting work I was doing. And then alongside that, I was working at Syracuse with the team at Hyperiss and these two gentlemen here to actually advance the core technology that you just heard about. So I was part of the early proof of concepts of this system. But just talk about, my co-founders, John Levy and Oleg Mukhanov, have both got, decades of experience between them in both business and technology. So John Levy joins us. He was the chairman of Hyperiss and now joins us as CEO at Seeqc. He's got over 35 years of experience in working and leading technology-driven companies, and he's led them straight from seed all the way to IPO on a number of occasions. So, really fantastic business leader to work with, just knows everyone in the area. Awesome. And then Oleg was the CTO of Hyperiss and joins us as our CTO of Seeqc, and has, again, decades of experience in technical leadership, and is a luminary in the field, and actually was the co-inventor of the SFQ core technology that we are using as part of our system. So he's a luminary in the field, and when I first met him, it was definitely, it was a bit of a celebrity meeting in the old, when you could interact together. So that was really exciting. But so we've got some fantastic leadership to join our team. And actually, also interestingly, we don't work in a single location. So from startup, we spun out in 3 different locations, and this was because we really wanted to, partner very closely with the excellent worldwide groups out there, and also take advantage of local talent and those local partnerships, because at the end of the day, we're in a field where there's not many people that can really do this. So we wanted to be able to take maximum advantage of local partnerships and local talent, and also commercial application specific systems. So we wanted to work deeply with our customers. So we're in areas where they are. And we can also access some non-dilutive funding, which is critical at this early stage of commercialization of quantum computing technologies. So we have our HQ in just outside of New York in White Plains, where our superconducting foundry is, and we've got a 5,000 square foot test center there. And we also have a small research lab in the University of Naples in Italy, and that was really important for us because we have a deep partnership with the research group there. Ultimately, this technology still it's got a lot some really interesting work has to be done in the academic world, so we want to keep close on the pulse of what's happening there in that world, so that we're actually integrated into the university there. And we've also got a test center being established in 2021 in London, in the UK, and that is to build some of our customer focused products, for one example being Merck. So just to kind of end it up, we believe we have the world-class team and the technology that's really unique for actually building a commercial grade superconducting quantum computer. And we validated this technology with just many generations and proven concepts. And for this, we want to actually build, the world's first truly hybrid quantum classical circuits. And we're also doing this in a very application specific and customer focused manner. So we're partnered deeply with the customers at this early stage to really build our systems from the ground up to support their needs. And we also have a fantastic chip foundry and great property IP portfolio to really support this, and some exciting partnerships. So with that, I'd like to thank you everyone for joining